I just wanted to give you some of the highlights of this book, Original Sin. And maybe you'll buy it, maybe you won't, but I want to give you a couple of the highlights because I did find them very telling. And what was so satisfying about it for me in reading it was so many of the stories that you and I have been discussing for years now, right? Like we did, like I said to them about the jump cuts in those Biden videos, like you knew. It was like, do we have that, Deb? Do we have that, Sot? Here, we're gonna show you the example. And it's been confirmed in this book that they had to videotape him so many times from so many different camera angles and then try to splice it together because he couldn't spit out 2 sentences. Do we have it? Let's watch.
Donald Trump lost 2 debates to me in 2020. And since then, he hadn't shown up for debate. Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice. So let's pick the dates, Donald. I hear you're free on Wednesdays.
Yeah, so we're not surprised, but it is confirmed in this book that that's what that's what they were doing. They were trying to get enough cuts of him that they could make it usable, and sometimes it didn't work. Sometimes it did, and then they would cringe when they saw people like us discussing how it was obvious. They were really hoping they could pull the wool over. There was this discussion with TJ Ducklow. It's SOT 6. It's from September 2020. We played this. This is back when we were just babies, the show, and we talked about it, where he was a deputy campaign or deputy press secretary for the Biden campaign. And Bret Baier got in his grill about whether Biden was using a teleprompter during campaign events. Watch.
Has Joe Biden ever used a teleprompter during local interviews or to answer Q&A with supporters?
Brett, we are not going to engage. This is straight from the Trump campaign.
But yeah, they're using it.
And what it does, Brett, is it's trying to distract the American people. Brett, they talk about it every day because they don't have a coherent argument for why Donald Trump deserves re-election.
But you can't answer the question.
Brett, I am not going to allow the Trump campaign to funnel their questions through Fox News and get me to respond to that.
It was true. He was using a teleprompter both at campaign events and to deal even at private fundraisers, some of which if he had to do it online, he would use a prompter. And if he did it in person, the use of note cards. And they actually reported that they would write down the Q's and the A's. President Biden would have both. And then the donors at these donor events would be given the pre-written Q's from the Biden team. It was just a question of like, who would get which one? But no one came up with their own question. Nothing would get asked that hadn't been pre-screened and come up with by Biden's staff. We talked a little bit with the guys about how they were cleansing the White House of as many resident staffers as they could so that they couldn't see Biden in the elevator and elsewhere. They report that one senior White House aide quit, because this person didn't think Biden should run again, confessed that, quote, we attempted to shield him from his own staff, so many people did not realize the extent of the decline beginning in 2023. So this person had enough of the cover-up, but admitted that they'd been attempting to shield everybody. The White House staff treated him as, quote, very delicate. Many of his own aides were kept at arm's length. He met mostly with that so-called Politburo and his top national security aides. They do indict in that way Jake Sullivan and Antony Blinken as on the inner circle and people who knew. There were note cards handed out for all cabinet meetings. And there too, he increasingly relied more on cards and pre-scripted exchanges, even when it was in private. 4 cabinet secretaries told them, quote, the cabinet meetings were terrible and at times uncomfortable. And they were from the beginning. I don't recall a great cabinet meeting in terms of his presence. They were so scripted. A second cabinet secretary told them, I hated the scripts for these meetings. You want people to tell you the truth and have a real dialogue. Those meetings were not that. David Axelrod, when he came out at one point and made a comment, you may remember this, about Joe Biden's age and whether that he'd be closer to 90 than 80 by the end of his second term. Remember that? He got his hand slapped by Chief of Staff Ron Klain. There's nobody else, Axe. There's nobody else. He's the only one who's beaten Trump. And you hear that a lot in this book. That's why they did the big cover-up. They thought only the master Joe Biden, who beat Trump in 2020, could beat him again. And by the way, Mike Donnellan is all over this book too. He's the one who, at the bitter end, was not showing Biden his polls. Chuck Schumer had to go in there and tell Biden the truth. And this guy, Mike Donnellan, knew in 2019 Biden was forgetting Mike Donlin's name on an 8-day bus tour in Iowa. A guy had been with him for 30 years. And Joe could not remember his name. He knew. Okay, going on. Back in 2020, when they were campaigning him the first time around during COVID, they read that voters were coming out of Biden's events less likely to support him. Precinct captains disappeared or said no thanks after attending a Biden rally. They did report, as you heard in the interview, that the first signs were after Beau died in 2015, which I believe that can have a way of deteriorating somebody's mental health in general. In March of 2020, March 2nd, they refer to this time he forgot the words of the Declaration of Independence. I'm just going to read you what he actually said. It's on tape, but I'll read it because it's just kind of, amusing. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women are created by the, the thing. April 2020 on CNN. This is on CNN. He struggled to explain the coronavirus. There's during World War, where Roosevelt came up with a thing that, was totally different than it's called the World War II. He had the war, the production board. That was April 2020 on CNN. Okay. That was, by the way, before the Laura Trump interview. That was before the Laura Trump interview, which was in October of 2020. So it was no mystery that Joe Biden was deteriorating, and there was plenty of speculation, and there should have been more about his cognitive decline. They talk about how it came as a surprise to everybody in the White House that he was announcing a second run, that he was going to run again, because there was this understanding that he was going to be a transitional president and only be one term. And it was kind of announced to them by Joe's top guy and by this guy who is Jill Biden's chief of staff. And they get into this meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron, where she let the cat out of the bag for apparently the first time. It was a meeting in December of 2022 between Macron, Nancy Pelosi, her daughter Alexandra Pelosi was there, Jill was there, and they write that Jill started talking about getting in shape for the upcoming campaign. You got to be at your best. And Joe looked totally clueless and didn't seem to have any idea what she was talking about, because Alexandra Pelosi looked at him and said, oh, do you have an announcement to make? He looked totally clueless. So not surprisingly, she was pushing it from the beginning. She wanted him out there, and she didn't care how badly that racehorse was hurt. She wanted it to run on the bad leg. That's Jill Biden. Oh, and by the way, they report that before state visits from foreign leaders, Jill Biden's team asked for talking points, with which national security officials were like, what? Why does the first lady need talking points before a state visit? You're supposed to look pretty and be diplomatic. You're not the president's sweetheart, and you're not a doctor either. That she frequently asked White House personnel like Rear Admiral John Kirby, who's a spokesperson over the Pentagon, to attend her briefings about state dinners. She thought she was president, guys. Those pictures of her with his jacket behind her chair at his desk, she might have been president, to be honest. She might have been. She and that Politburo were making the calls. Let's see, going forward. This is a great story about the Biden Victory Fund raiser. Okay, I got to find this one in my notes here so I can read it to you exactly. Where is it? Give me 1 second to find it. Where is it? Well, I can't find it in front of me, but I know. Oh, it's way towards the back. Wait a minute. I found it. Okay. So this is a group of Hollywood people watching the debate in June of 2024. And those people included, among others, Rob Reiner, Jane Fonda, and Doug Emhoff, Kamala Harris's husband, was there. They report a few minutes into the debate and the obvious meltdown. Rob Reiner in the main living room stated plainly, "We are fucked." A few seats away, Jane Fonda was equally distraught. Reiner became angry. Soon he was venting, standing, full of fury. he seemed to be looking at Doug Emhoff. Daggers. Quote, "We're going to lose our fucking democracy because of you," Reiner yelled. Because of me? Emhoff thought. So obviously they talked to Emhoff because how else would they know what was in his head? Biden Victory Fund's finance chair, Chris Korge, was overheard saying, "We are totally fucked. This is over. It's over, all over." Donors were putting their heads in their hands. That's a bit of color, don't you think? That's kind of interesting. Oh, and Hakeem Jeffries, who's now like, move forward. There's nothing to see here. There was a debate watch party sponsored by the caucus vice chair, Ted Lieu. And after the debate, a number of Democrats, they report, surrounded Hakeem Jeffries, worried. "What just happened is not acceptable," one of them said. "Something has to be done." They wondered, does he have a bad illness? Is there some sort of psychological thing that's temporary? Some believe there was no way he could stay in the race after what they had just seen. And Jeffries told them, calm is an intentional decision. So, I mean, he knew. He was trying to quiet the troops. This July, speaking of resets, there's a global summit of BRICS nations in Rio. This bloc of emerging superpowers, including China, Russia, India, and Iran, are meeting with the goal of displacing the U.S. dollar as the global currency. They're calling this the Rio Reset. As BRICS nations push forward with their plans, some worry global demand for U.S. dollars will decrease, bringing down the value of dollars in your savings. While this transition will not happen overnight, the Rio Reset could mark a pivotal moment. So learn if diversifying your savings into gold is right for you. Birch Gold Group can help you move your hard-earned savings into a tax-sheltered IRA in precious metals. Claim your free info kit on gold by texting MK to the number 989898. With an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, let Birch Gold arm you with a free, no-obligation info kit on owning gold before July and the Rio Reset. Text MK to 989898 today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.